I can't do this show today, Dave.
It's 7 verses, man. It's 7 verses.
Yeah,
You can do it. I believe in you.
I was telling this. I smell what you're cooking. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I have a different take.
Based on my dreams.
Well, based on the fact that you're old. I mean, you can go all that clinical.
All right, welcome to Pondering Psalms 87. I'm Kurt Austin.
I'm David Mullins.
There you go. And so together we have been pondering the Psalms now. We just keep plugging away. We're at our 18th Psalm that we're looking at here.
Are you serious? 18?
Yeah, if my math is correct.
Man.
And it's usually not, so it could be a lot less than that. But we started with 69, and each week we read a psalm every day, or we try to. I mean, let's just be honest. Some days we struggle with that, and then we get together and we talk about it. So maybe what it means to us and how we've perceived that. But also, we want to invite you to be a part of that conversation. If you're reading the Psalms along with us, or if you've just kind of joined us for the first time, read through it. Maybe leave a comment here on YouTube, on Facebook. Or with any other platform that you might see this appear, any educational product that you're going through, engage it. We'd love to hear from you. So, Dave, Psalm 87 is only 7 verses. What did you think about this week?
That's it. Well, how do you want to jump into this? I mean, it is only 7 verses. Where you want to start, like you're prone to do, with just a takeaway at the end, or
let's see where that takes us this time. See if you can play that game. I don't think you can, but we can give it a try.
I can.
All right.
My takeaway was the grace and love of God.
See, I didn't get there.
So there you go.
I felt like it. So for those of you who've read it, this is a psalm of the sons of Korah, the descendants of Korah, and it is a kind of a celebration of Jerusalem. And in verse 2, he loves the city of Jerusalem more than any other city in Israel. But it's not just about a geographic location, is what I would say about this. Is that a good or accurate depiction of this song?
Well, I think that the author of it was maybe thinking more of a physical place, because it's very Jerusalem centered, although some of the scholars think that it was written before Jerusalem was the center, and so it was actually Dan. But I don't, I have no idea how scholars come up with some of it. Yeah, thinking that it was written later. There's some indication. Oh, maybe it's because of, well, see, Babylon, that was kind of a later thing. So, I mean, they thought it was written earlier. So I have no idea.
Yeah, but I read something about the dispersion of the Jews, and this is kind of, hey, it doesn't matter where you live. Jerusalem's the heart of who you are. Let's just kind of go through it then, because obviously we're not going to get anywhere with the big idea kind of a thing. So,
well, you wanted my takeaway. That was my takeaway.
Well, that'll work. Now let's actually look at it. So, verses 1 through 3. There's an interlude, right? There's an interlude from verses 1 through 3 and 3 through 6. Then another interlude. So we've broken up the slides for that reason.
Yeah, and like you said, I think the person writing it, whether they were writing it about Dan or someone came in later and kind of tweaked it a little bit because of the dispersion and the exile and everything. Regardless, I think they're actually thinking of the physical place of Jerusalem, and God chose it. God chose it out of all the other cities. There are other cities that God could have chosen. There are other places, but God, for whatever reason, out of His sovereignty, chose Jerusalem. For we're not sure there's any reason.
The Holy Mountain. I mean, it's that if you've never been to Jerusalem, I mean, it is a really interesting city. It's a beautiful city. It's got so much. I was lucky enough to go twice to Israel, and our tour guide at one point pointed to a rock, some rock that was placed there by somebody, and he said, "This is fairly new addition to our country. It was placed here 500 years ago." And so, but and for them that's new. He said, "I know for you in America, 500 years is antiquity, but for us it's very new." And so everywhere you're looking, everywhere you're seeing, there's so much history, and it's really cool. But of course, this is written when there's not so much history yet. I mean, it's still in process, and yet it's still a place of choosing. And certainly the political climate, or the global political situation, given that Israel and the whole fighting, the Muslims claiming that that's where Muhammad was, what it is holy to them, and for the Jews claiming it's holy for them, for the Christians that's claiming that it's holy for them. It's a lot of interesting overlap when you're there.
Yeah. I'm not sure that was the issue when the psalmist wrote this, though.
I'm sure it wasn't.
Yeah. The interesting.
That's Dave's way of telling me that I just went on a tangent that had nothing to do with the psalm.
But no, it's an important tangent because it has to do with us. It has to do with us.
Okay. All right.
So that's fine. That's fine. No, it's not you're going on a tangent. It's the fact that, it does deal with us, and it'll probably maybe come in later. That tangent. We'll see.
Okay.
Because I know it seems like it, but we have not actually rehearsed this. So
I know this is such a well-oiled machine that people probably, it's scripted. We write the script out sometime in the early week.
Yeah, and actually talking about it being scripted was part of our script this week, as was that.
So 1, 2, and 3. Do we cover everything in 1 through 3 that really kind of jumps off the page?
At least to us, just talking about just the beautiful city of Jerusalem. What, O city of God, what glorious things are said of you. This is kind of where I see the grace of God operating.
Yeah.
And I know the commentary of which you speak, saying that this was about the Jews that had been, distributed in other places or exiled. But I'm not sure I completely track with what he was saying. Because Egypt and Babylon actually represent two of the major villains in the history of Israel. Egypt, I mean, they were enslaved for 400 years in Egypt, and God rescued them from Egypt. And then Babylon came in after Assyria. So you kind of have almost these bookends, came in after Assyria and overthrew Jerusalem. And then the other cities all have something to do with being Israel's enemies. Although Ethiopia, I think, was the fact that it's just a long way away. And nowhere does it mention the Jews that have been exiled in this. And so, as far as I can tell, and this is why I think the commentator writer didn't go there. This has huge implications. If the psalmist is not talking about the Jews, the Israelites, if he's actually talking about Egypt and Babylon, Israel's enemies, becoming citizens of Jerusalem. And so do you see where I say my takeaway is about God's grace in this?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I did not. So I read this every day. I tried to study it a little bit, and I could not, for the life of me, get out kind of that this was a hymn. It's a song, right, of national pride. I could not get out like our Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, yeah.
That it was a Jewish Star-Spangled Banner, that Jerusalem is the place. They've all become citizens of Jerusalem. And, there's this nationality call. And I couldn't get past that. I even got so far into it, Dave, that I was trying to think, what kind of tune would this be? Would this be a riotous, call to action kind of a tune? Would it be loving and sincere, bringing us home?
Drinking tune. You're
Yeah,
singing it in a bar.
I couldn't
Yeah.
get past all of those images in my head. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate your insight into that. Helps me understand it so much better.
Well, and I would say it could very well be talking just about the Jews, because there might be this backdrop that when the psalmist says stuff like that, of course he's talking about the Jew. I mean, that might be the mindset of the Jews and Israelites who are reading this. But when I look through here, it's like nowhere does it say that these are our people that have been cast to all these places. And so even if they were born in Babylon or Egypt or Ethiopia, they can still say that they were born in Jerusalem, God's city, which is gracious in and of itself, is a thing of grace. But when you really look at that list and begin to wonder if it's if he's talking about even the enemies of God, even the enemies of the Israelites at some point will because of God's grace say they've all become citizens of Jerusalem.
I think I'm going to do something that I think can be dangerous sometimes when we
we can always fix it in post.
That's right. We can just delete it. It never happened. Matter of fact, Kurt, there's this little black box where Kurt used to be because he's added nothing to this episode. So, but I think sometimes it's dangerous to say, so this psalm is reflected in the New Testament here. Or you can take something that was said in the New Testament and then just draw a parallel to that. But I was thinking when Jesus says there are other sheep in other pastures, and that this is similar to that idea that there are people out there that God loves, that God wants to call into what's the word I want? A residence of Jerusalem. You are, well, right there it is in verse 6. They have all become citizens of Jerusalem, and that there is nothing, no matter your history of enslavement, your history of oppression, your warring against, that keeps you out of that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And I was reading one place where it said, this could vary, and this is humbling to me. This is humbling to me. It said that this very well could be where Paul gets his whole worldview about Gentiles. That it wasn't like this new thing that all of a sudden, I mean, he talks about revelation, and he did have revelation from God, but maybe one of the things God did was say, hey, this has always been the plan. And I think he writes about that in Romans, how Israel had been, or the Jews had been gifted with this message, but instead of using it for the world, it was used for they saw it as a reason to be, we're special, we're set apart, when it was really meant for the world. And here, I mean, I could see this as evidence. And what's humbling is that Paul or anybody would know scripture and the Bible so well to be able to pick up on these threads that might be very small, thin threads, but they're there nonetheless. So it isn't like a different message between the Old and the New Testament. It's one of grace the whole time. And it's talking about Jerusalem, but the New Testament says that we're citizens of a city not made with hands. And so it shifts from this place here on earth to the ultimate city of God.
Yeah. That is great news. I mean, I'm just real quickly share a story about my grandmother. I loved her. Her name was Frida, and she helped raise us as kids, as little kids. And she got married to a guy who he ended up taking all her money and kind of left her in a it was a really bad situation. And they got, he divorced her because now she didn't have any money, so she didn't really help him much. And so he left her, and and grandma was always bitter about that. She was angry about that. And later in life, somebody said, "Did you hear that he is going to church now, that he's become a Christian?" that he's a faithful follower of Christ. Man, it made her mad.
Wow.
Because God was willing to give him grace and she wasn't. And then she ultimately she said, and the worst thing is now I have to spend eternity with that guy. I mean, she literally said that, and
Yeah.
it was so great, her response. But I mean, that goes to this passage here,
Yeah.
is that the grace is offered to everybody, and we are sometimes the biggest barrier to them receiving that grace because
Mm,
we still see them as our oppressor. We still see them as our
yeah.
our enemy, and rather than saying, well, if God can give you that grace, I can too. Um,
Yeah, I will say I really struggled with this psalm because I think just like you, I was looking, about Jerusalem, and I've never been to Jerusalem. I know the importance it has in Scripture, but it's short, 7 verses, all about Jerusalem. But
mhm.
then I forget when it started shifting. Maybe it was Thursday or Friday. I mean, just recent when you look at all this and you're realizing that no, you're not a citizen of Jerusalem, but you can become a citizen of Jerusalem, and everyone enjoys the rights of citizenship there,
Right.
even
That's
though they weren't born there or maybe even belong there. And they're into verse 6, they have all become citizens of Jerusalem. And if we're ready to move on to the last
Yeah,
verse,
yeah, let's do it.
I love this. They will play flutes and sing. The source of my life springs from Jerusalem.
See, and now that I'm looking at that through the filter of the grace, which I didn't all week, that verse by now actually makes sense to me. It seemed like what he's just shifting. This guy's all over the map, and now it makes complete sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the question, if this begs a question for me is, where is my source of life? Where does my source of life spring from? Where does your source of life spring from? And Jerusalem really is, I guess in some way I could say God is Jerusalem. He's the city. And he invites us in as citizens, even though we don't belong, even though maybe we have been, enemies. At least at one point, he is inviting us in to put down, whatever weapons that we've had or used in our life,
Mhm.
and become part of this beautiful place where there's joy. I mean, the only reason anyone would play a flute, I mean, really, a flute. Why not a trumpet? I mean, trumpet's like a manly.
You're poking the wrong bear. My wife was a flute player. She's dedicated to the flute even to today. So
Well, but it's that's fine. That's fine. But can you see Arnold Schwarzenegger playing a flute?
no, but Matt Damon. I think
Matt
I've heard
Damon,
Matt Damon is a really good flute player,
a flautist.
flautist.
Yeah, he flouts. But anyway, it is just like we're laughing, and Kurt is really laughing, and
No, I'm not laughing. That's not funny at all.
okay, oh, not at all. But it's that joy. The source of my life springs from Jerusalem. And Kurt and I were talking before this started, just about and I don't know when people will be actually watching this, but we're going through a pandemic. There's an election coming up in less than 2 months, like 40
Yeah,
days or something like
40
that.
days.
And there's always bickering and fighting, but it's even worse this year. We've got race relation stuff. There's hurricanes. There's wildfires. Just it seems like the world is crying out, coming out at the the seams are coming apart. and
Mhm.
and if that is your source, man, you're at a tough place.
Yeah.
But when we were able to lift our eyes and realize that, yeah, our citizenship is not really here. It's the city of God, and he invites us in, even though I don't belong. Kurt, you belong, but I
Do you remember the hymn? Maybe you still sing it at your church. We're marching to Zion.
We haven't sung that at our. I know the hymn. I have not sung
Yeah.
that at the current church. Yeah,
Beautiful,
marching to
beautiful
Zion,
Zion.
beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're
Yep,
marching to
yep.
Zion, the beautiful city of God. And that's, I don't know. Maybe it is a rallying cry. Maybe it is a chant. Maybe it's a flag waving for those who are citizens, and anybody can have that
Yeah,
flag.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a signpost to help us remember. To remember that, this is not our home. We're involved here, and we want to do what we can to bring God's kingdom to here on earth as it's done in heaven. But in the end, He invites us. He invites us in. He invites us all in.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. I really do appreciate that, because as we go through these, folks, I'm doubting this will ever happen, but there's possible someday Dave won't understand a psalm and I'll be able to bring something to the table.
I'm not saying I understand. Again, this is our takeaways. This is what we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say
in my case, not seen.
Well, and again, I think the more you spend time with the psalm, the more God unfolds the meaning. So we really do ourselves a disservice when we just read. It's like, okay, I read that 7 verses. Okay, Jerusalem's great, and then we just kind of move on. There's a lot, there's more than what meets the eye.
When you spend more time worrying about the tune of the psalm than the actual content of the psalm, you may have missed the point. I'm just saying, maybe if you're reading and you're thinking,
so if this was a song,
I was like, is this in a minor key? Oh, I should listen to Hebrew music and see what that sounds like.
You know what you should do? There's a project where they're trying to put all the psalms to music. See if they have this one done. See what they did.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So
I'll get little Israel flags and I'll fly them like this while I listen to them.
Yeah, so. There you go.
All right, now we've rambled enough. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. It's great, as always, to be together and to just think through things with this. Again, engage it. Tell us what you think. And we will look forward to seeing you back here next week. We're doing Psalm
88.
88.
It's a little bit longer.
So take your time.
Less joyful.
Don't try and put a tune to it, because you'll just be depressed when it's all done. So, all right. So we will talk to you in about a week, and we will see you then. Thanks for joining. Oh my gosh! I took my truck to the mechanic because I wanted to have him look over. It had a check engine light, and I said, "Can you do that?" And so he said, "Kurt,
some black electrical tape fixes that."
Well, that's what he said. He knew a guy that just unplugged the check engine light, and so it never burned. But I hadn't seen him it's been six years since I've seen him. And he's a rough character. And I come in and he was not making eye contact with me. I'm there to pick up my truck.
Yeah.
And he said, "Kurt, I'm really sorry. This ended up being a lot more than I meant for it to be. I didn't." And he hands me the bill, and it was $500. But for all he did, I'd paid $1,000 anywhere else.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, that's all right, Gary." I said, I know you fixed it. And he said, well, he looked up, he looked at my top of my head. He went, "Good Lord, what happened to you? You're old." I said, "Geez, Gary, can you kind of ease into that just a little bit?"
For another $500, you can.
I can add tact to that for another $5.